Sneered, he adores her, not you. Let him take the house and the money. I signed the divorce papers, he can keep her. But the house and money are mine. Can you imagine your own mother, your father, and your little sister, all sitting there, watching your husband of 10 years hold your sister's hand, a hand resting on a baby bump you didn't even know existed? What would you do if your entire family then tried to steal your house right out from under you? That night, my life didn't just unravel. It detonated. My mother didn't even blink when she told me to hand over my husband. She just sliced her steak, calmly. My dad, Harold, couldn't even meet my eyes. He just stared into his wine glass like it held all the answers. And Brenda, my baby sister, Brenda, was absolutely glowing. Her hand rested protectively over a slight bump that I hadn't noticed, not until that very second. And Greg, my husband, the man who had kissed me goodbye that morning and said he loved me, was holding her other hand. "Excuse me," I whispered. My voice was so small, so pathetic, it made me sick. It was the voice of the little girl who always apologized for simply existing in that house. Greg finally looked at me, but there was no guilt in his eyes. Only defiance. "Valerie, please don't make a scene," he said, his tone utterly condescending, like you'd speak to a hysterical child. "We didn't want to tell you like this, but we couldn't hide it anymore. Brenda is 4 months along. We're in love." The blood drained from my face. 4 months. *4 months. You've been sleeping with my sister for 4 months. Or longer. Brenda chimed in then, that tiny, cruel smile curling her lips, a look I knew so well. "Whatever, Val. The timeline doesn't matter. What matters is that we are a family now. Real family. Something you obviously couldn't give him." It was a direct shot at our fertility struggles. The years of negative tests. The nights I cried in Greg's arms while he whispered that it didn't matter, that we were enough. It was all a lie. I looked at my mother, Joyce. Surely, she would be outraged. Surely, she would slap Greg across the face and throw him out. But she just took a sip of her wine, then sighed. "Valerie, look at the facts. You are a career woman. Always traveling, always obsessed with your company. You are strong. You can survive on your own. But Brenda, she's delicate. She needs a provider. And this baby, this is my grandchild, my flesh and blood. I am your flesh and blood, too." I snapped, my voice rising, despite myself. "He is my husband." "Technically," my father grunted, finally looking up. "But the marriage is effectively over, isn't it? You two have been drifting apart. We all see it. Greg is happy with Brenda. Look at them." I looked. They looked like a grotesque parody of a happy couple. My husband and my baby sister. The nausea hit me in a violent wave. I stood up, my chest scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "Sit down, Valerie," my mother commanded. "We need to discuss the logistics. Greg can't just move out into a rental. He needs stability for the baby. We think it's best if you move into the condo downtown. Leave the house to Greg and Brenda. It's a good school district, and it's close to us so we can help with the baby." My mouth fell open. "You want me to move out of my own house? The house I bought? The house I pay the mortgage on? It's Greg's house, too," my mother said dismissively. "California is a community property state, isn't it? Or Washington. Wherever we are, marriage means sharing. Besides, you have plenty of money. You can buy another one. Don't be greedy, Valerie. It's unbecoming." Greedy. I had paid for everything. I'd paid off my parents' car. I'd paid for Brenda's 3 failed attempts at college. I'd paid for Greg's business ventures that never made a dime. And now I was greedy for wanting to keep my own home. "I'm leaving," I said, grabbing my purse. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the strap. "If you walk out that door," Greg said, his voice dropping an octave, trying to sound authoritative, "you are proving exactly why I left you. You are cold. You care more about your assets than human life." "I care about loyalty," I screamed, the sound echoing off the walls. "I care that my husband is sleeping with my sister." "Lower your voice," my mother hissed. "What will the neighbors think?" I looked at them one last time. The tableau of monsters. My parents enabling the betrayal. My sister stealing my life. My husband, the traitor. I'm not giving you the house, I said, my voice trembling but clear. And I'm not giving you a divorce without a fight. You will, my mother said, confidently. Because if you don't, you'll lose this family forever. Do the right thing, Valerie. Be the big sister for once. I turned and ran. I didn't look back at the warm glow of that dining room. I just needed air. I needed to get away before I shattered into a million pieces right there on their doorstep. The rain in Seattle doesn't wash things clean. It just makes everything gray and slick. I stumbled to my car, fumbling with the keys. My vision was blurred, not just by the relentless drizzle, but by hot, angry tears that burned my cheeks. I got inside the sanctuary of my leather seats, the car I bought. I reminded myself bitterly, and locked the doors. For a moment, I just sat there, gasping for air, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I started the engine and peeled away from the curb, leaving behind the house where I had spent a lifetime trying to be good enough. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. I merged onto the I-5, the wiper slapping a frantic rhythm against the glass. My mind was racing, trying to find a loophole in reality. Maybe this was a joke, a sick, twisted prank. Maybe I would wake up in my bed next to Greg, and he would be warm and smell like his cedarwood soap, and I would tell him about this nightmare, and he would laugh and hold me. But then the image of Brenda's hand on her stomach flashed in my mind. The smugness, the absolute lack of shame. It wasn't a nightmare. It was my life. I drove aimlessly for an hour, the city lights smearing into long streaks of neon. I eventually pulled into a parking lot overlooking the Puget Sound. It was pitch black out there, the water invisible except for the reflection of the city. I turned off the engine and let the silence crush me. How? How could he? I replayed the last 4 months. The late nights Greg spent networking. The weekends he went to help his parents with repairs. He wasn't with his parents. He was with Mindstar. He was with her star. They were all in on it. Every time I went to Sunday dinner, did they laugh at me behind my back? Did they look at me, the foolish woman working 80-hour weeks to fund their lifestyles, and mock my ignorance? I screamed. It was a raw, primal sound that tore at my throat. I pounded the steering wheel until my palms ached. I screamed for the 10 years I had wasted. I screamed for the baby I couldn't have and the one she was carrying. Then came the bargaining, the pathetic, desperate bargaining of a woman in shock. Maybe we can fix this a tiny, traitorous voice whispered in my head. Maybe if I agreed to the open marriage. Maybe if I helped raise the baby. No. I looked at the passenger seat. There was a receipt crumpled in the cup holder. I picked it up. It was from a jewelry store, dated 2 weeks ago. A charm bracelet. I didn't have a charm bracelet. Brenda did. I remembered seeing a new silver chain on her wrist at dinner. He bought her jewelry. With my money. The grief began to curdle into something colder. I thought about his vows. For richer, for poorer. He certainly loved the richer part. When we met, I was just a junior accountant, and he was a promising real estate agent. We were equals then. But as I climbed the ladder, taking night classes, earning my CPA, pushing for CFO, he stagnated. And instead of being proud, he resented it. "You're emasculating me," he had said once during a fight about money. "You treat me like an employee." I had apologized then. I had transferred $10,000 into his personal account the next day to invest in his consulting business, just to soothe his ego. I had bought his love, over and over again. And my parents. That hurt the most. Be the big sister. That was the mantra of my existence. Brenda is sensitive, Valerie. Brenda needs help, Valerie. You're the strong one. Being strong was just a euphemism for being used. They didn't love me for who I was. They loved me for what I provided. I was the family mule, carrying the heavy load so Brenda could skip along lightly. I looked at my phone. 5 missed calls from my mother. A text from Greg. "Stop being dramatic. Come back and we can talk about the move-out schedule." Move-out schedule. He was already planning how to arrange my furniture in his new life. I didn't reply. I started the car again. The tears had stopped. My eyes felt dry and gritty. And there was a hollow ache in my chest that I knew would stay there for a long, long time. But as I backed out of the parking space, the denial was gone. The reality was a cold, hard stone in my gut. They wanted a war. They wanted my house. They wanted my money. They thought I would roll over because I always had. They thought I was weak because I was kind. I drove home to my house, not to pack, but to secure the perimeter. I wasn't going to the downtown condo. I was going to sleep in my own bed, even if it smelled like him. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be the daughter or the wife. Tomorrow, I would be the CFO. And I was about to audit their entire lives. To understand why I didn't just flip the table and burn the house down right then and there, you have to understand the hierarchy of the Anderson family. I was the firstborn, healthy and robust. Brenda came 8 years later, premature and sickly. From the moment she arrived in an incubator, sucking in shallow breaths, she became the sun, and I became the shadow. It started with small things. Hush, Valerie, the baby is sleeping. Give that toy to Brenda, she's crying. You don't need new shoes, Valerie, but Brenda needs orthopedic inserts. I learned early on that my needs were secondary. My role was to facilitate Brenda's happiness. I remember my 16th birthday. I had saved up money from babysitting and mowing lawns all summer to buy a car, a beat-up Honda Civic. My dad had promised to match my savings if I got straight A's. I did. I presented my report card and my jar of cash with pride. My father looked at the jar, then at my mother. Valerie, honey, my mom started, using that soft, pitying voice. We have a situation. Brenda needs braces, the expensive kind, and dance camp is coming up. We really can't spare the matching funds right now. But you promised, I said, my voice trembling. Don't be selfish, my dad snapped. Your sister has self-esteem issues. The braces are a medical necessity. You can take the bus. It builds character. So, I took the bus. Brenda got her braces and her dance camp. She quit dance camp after 2 days because it was too hard, and the money was gone. I never got the car match. I bought the Honda entirely on my own 2 years later. That was the pattern. I worked. Brenda received. The worst incident, the one that should have warned me about what she was capable of, happened during my senior prom. I had bought a beautiful emerald green dress. I worked double shifts at the diner to afford it. It hung in my closet, wrapped in plastic, a symbol of the one night I would be beautiful and special. 2 days before prom, I came home to find Brenda, then 10 years old, in my room. She was wearing the dress. It was dragging on the floor, and she had taken scissors to the hem because it was too long for her. She was spinning around, playing princess. What are you doing? I shrieked. She tripped. The scissors gouged a long tear right through the bodice. I cried. I actually fell to the floor and sobbed. My mother rushed in. When she saw the ruined dress and Brenda's guilty face, she didn't scold Brenda. She turned to me. Valerie, you shouldn't have left it where she could reach it. She's just a child. She wanted to be like her big sister. She ruined it. I yelled. I can't wear this. We can pin it, Mom said dismissively. Stop overreacting. You're making Brenda cry. And there it was. Brenda was crying fake crocodile tears, and suddenly I was the villain. I wore a borrowed dress to prom that didn't fit. Brenda got ice cream to suit her trauma for my yelling. This dynamic followed us into adulthood. I went to college on scholarships and loans. Brenda went on my parents' dime, dropped out, went to beauty school, dropped out, and then found herself in Europe for a year, funded by a credit card that my dad eventually asked me to help pay off because the interest is killing us, Val. And you have that fancy job now. I paid it. That's the sickness of being the shadow child. You think that if you just pay enough, if you just fix enough problems, maybe they will finally look at you with the same adoration they give the golden child. I thought I could buy their love. When I introduced Greg to the family, I thought I finally had someone on my team. He saw how they treated me. Your parents are crazy, he told me after our first Christmas, watching Brenda open a pile of gifts while I got a calendar and a pair of socks. I'm going to take care of you, Val. You won't ever be second best with me. I clung to those words. I married him, believing them. I didn't realize that Greg was essentially a male version of Brenda, insecure, entitled, and looking for a host. He didn't want to save me from my dynamic with my family. He wanted to slot himself into it. He saw how giving I was, how I threw money at problems to make them go away, and he realized he had hit the jackpot. So, when my mother said, "Be the big sister at that dinner table," it triggered 3 decades of conditioning. But it also triggered 3 decades of suppressed rage. I wasn't 16 anymore. I wasn't dependent on them for shelter or love. I was a CFO. I managed millions of dollars. I fired incompetent people for a living. And as I sat in my house that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized my family was a bad investment, a toxic asset, and it was time to liquidate. The next morning, I woke up in a cold, empty bed. For a split second, I reached out for Greg, my muscle memory expecting his warmth. Then the reality crashed down on me like a physical blow. He wasn't here. He was likely with her. I dragged myself out of bed and walked into his home office, or rather, his gaming room that we called an office to preserve his dignity. When I met Greg, he was a real estate agent. He wasn't a top producer, but he had charm. He had potential. I was attracted to his easygoing nature, which balanced my high-strung, type A personality. I was the planner. He was the dreamer. It seemed like a good match. But as my career skyrocketed, his stalled. I made partner at my firm. The market crashed, and he sold 0 houses in a year. That was fine, I told him. I make enough for both of us. Take some time. Figure out what you want to do. That was my mistake. I gave him a cushion, and he decided to take a nap on it for 5 years. He rebranded himself as a business consultant. It was a vague title that meant he spent all day on LinkedIn and Reddit, occasionally meeting a buddy for lunch to brainstorm ideas that never materialized. He stopped contributing to the mortgage. Then he stopped paying the utility bills. Then he stopped buying groceries. Slowly, insidiously, I became the sole provider. I didn't mind the money at first. I loved him, but I minded the attitude. The less he earned, the more arrogant he became. It was a defense mechanism. I knew that. He felt small, so he had to act big. He started critiquing my spending. "Do you really need another designer suit, Val?" he would ask, while wearing a $500 watch I bought him. "You're so materialistic. You work too much. You're losing touch with what matters." What mattered, apparently, was him. I walked over to his desk. It was a mess of papers and unopened mail. I started sifting through it. A notice for a past due payment on a credit card I didn't know existed. A speeding ticket. And then, a brochure for a luxury resort in Cabo. I froze. I recognized that resort. I had gone there for a corporate retreat 6 months ago. Greg had stayed home because he had a big meeting. I logged into my laptop and pulled up the credit card statement for the joint account, the one I filled every month for household expenses. There it was, a charge for 2 plane tickets to Cabo, dates overlapping with my business trip, and a charge for a double room. He had taken her there, while I was sitting in meetings, closing deals to pay for our life. He was drinking margaritas on the beach with my sister, using my money. I felt sick. It wasn't just the sex. It was the financing of the betrayal. He had made me pay for my own humiliation. I kept digging. I looked at the cash withdrawals. $500 here, $300 there. Consulting expenses, he had noted in our budget app. But looking at the dates, August 12th, Brenda's birthday. September 5th, the day Brenda's car broke down. October 31st, Halloween. He had been subsidizing her life for years, not just months. Years. "You made me feel small," he had told me during our last anniversary dinner, the real one, not the disaster from yesterday. "You walk around like you own the place just because you sign the checks." "I don't try to," I had replied, feeling guilty. "I just want us to be secure." "Security isn't sexy, Val," he had sneered. "Need is sexy. You don't need me." He was right. I didn't need him, but Brenda did. Brenda was a bottomless pit of need. She needed money. She needed validation. She needed someone to save her. Greg couldn't save himself, but he could pretend to save Brenda, using my resources. It was a parasitic symbiosis. He got to feel like a big man, and she got a free ride. I slammed the laptop shut. My sadness was evaporating, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't a tragedy. This was a robbery. I looked around the room at the things I had bought him: the top-of-the-line gaming PC, the ergonomic chair, the signed basketball jersey on the wall. He was a leech. A handsome, charming, gaslighting leech. And he had made a fatal error. He thought that because I was generous, I was stupid. He thought that because I loved him, I wouldn't check the books. But I am a CFO. I check everything. I heard the front door open downstairs. Heavy footsteps. He was here. I took a deep breath, smoothed my hair, and stood up. The weeping wife was gone. The auditor was in. Greg walked into the house like he owned it. He didn't look remorseful. He looked annoyed, like a man inconvenienced by a tedious errand. He was carrying a stack of flattened cardboard boxes under his arm. "Valerie," he said when he saw me standing at the top of the stairs, "I'm glad you're here. We need to expedite this." I walked down the stairs slowly, my hand gliding over the banister I had sanded and stained myself 3 years ago. "Expedite what, exactly?" "The transition," he said, dropping the boxes in the foyer. "Brenda is hormonal. She's stressed. The baby can feel stress, you know. We need to get settled in here by the weekend so I can set up the nursery." I stopped on the last step, looking him in the eye. "You are not setting up a nursery in my house, Greg." He rolled his eyes. "Here we go. I told your mom you would be difficult. Look, Val, let's be adults. This house is 4 bedrooms. It's too big for one person. You're never here anyway. You live at the office. Brenda and I are starting a family. We need the space. It's just logical." "Logical?" I let out a dry, incredulous laugh. "Logical is you moving into an apartment you can afford, which, by my calculations, is a cardboard box under the freeway." His face darkened. The charm evaporated, revealing the nastiness underneath. "Don't start with the money trip. That's all you have, isn't it? Money. You think it makes you better than everyone else." "It pays the mortgage," I said calmly. "Something you haven't done in 5 years." "I contributed in other ways," he shouted, his face flushing red. "I managed the household. I took care of things. I gave you emotional support. You slept with my sister," I counted. "Is asterisk that asterisk emotional support? I slept with her because she appreciates me." He stepped closer, trying to use his height to intimidate me. "It used to work. It didn't work today. She looks at me like I'm a man, not a bank account. You pushed me away, Valerie. You were cold. You were distant. You were essentially asterisk sterile star." The word hung in the air. Asterisk sterile star. He knew how much that hurt. He knew about the IVF injections, the hormones, the devastation of every negative result. He was weaponizing my pain to justify his adultery. "I tried to give you a child," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts. "I put my body through hell." "Yeah, well, it didn't work," he said cruelly. "Brenda, it just happened. Natural, easy. Maybe it's a sign, Val. Maybe we weren't meant to reproduce. Maybe nature knew you weren't mother material." A slap would have hurt less, but I didn't strike him. I just stared at him, memorizing this moment. This was the closure I needed. There was no love left here. Just a rot that needed to be excised. "Get your things," I said, my voice turning to ice. "Get your personal effects, clothes, toiletries. You are not taking the electronics. You are not taking the furniture. And you are definitely not taking the car." "The hell I'm not," he scoffed. "That's community property. I talked to a lawyer friend. Half of everything is mine, including this house, my 401k. Well, asterisk your asterisk 401k, since we're married." He smirked. "So, you can make this easy. Sign the house over to me as part of the settlement, and I won't go after your retirement fund. Or we can fight, and I'll take half of your precious company stock, too. Your choice." He thought he had me checkmated. He thought he knew the law. "Pack your clothes, Greg," I repeated. "You have 1 hour before I change the locks." You can't change the locks. It's a marital residence. Actually, I said, checking my watch. I can. But go ahead, call the police. I'd love to explain to them why my husband is trying to move his pregnant mistress, my sister, into my home. He glared at me, realizing I wasn't backing down. He grabbed the boxes and stormed upstairs. I heard him slamming drawers, throwing things around. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady now. He had just admitted his strategy, blackmail. He wanted to trade my retirement for the house. He wanted to strip me bare to build a nest for Brenda. He didn't know about the LLC. He didn't know that the house wasn't technically in my name or his. He didn't know that the car was a company lease. He was playing checkers. I was playing 4D chess. I watched him haul 3 suitcases down the stairs 20 minutes later. He had also grabbed the PlayStation. I let him take it. It was a small price to pay to get him out the door. You'll hear from my lawyer, he spat as he walked out. Don't think you won this. Mom and Dad are on my side. Everyone is on my side. You're going to end up a lonely, bitter old woman with nothing but your cats and your spreadsheets. Goodbye, Greg, I said. He slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I walked over and threw the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain across. I was alone in the big, silent house. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. Peace, however, was short-lived. Greg hadn't just left. He had gone straight to Command Central, my parents' house, and activated the network. In psychology, they call them flying monkeys, the people an abuser manipulates to torment their victim. My family was a veritable A-force of them. It started with a ping on my phone about 10 minutes after Greg left. Then another. Then a deluge. Asterisk Aunt Linda. Valerie, I heard what happened. I'm so disappointed in you. Kicking a pregnant woman's father out on the street? How Christian is that? Asterisk cousin Mike. Dude, let Greg have the house. You're rich. Don't be a jerk. Asterisk even my grandmother, who barely knew how to text. Asterisk family helps family. Shame on you. Asterisk they had spun the narrative perfectly. In their version, I was the vindictive, barren shrew punishing the star-crossed lovers. Nobody mentioned the adultery. Nobody mentioned the sister betrayal. It was all focused on the innocent baby and my selfishness. Then came the email. The subject line was simply, resolution. It was from my father, CCing my mother, Greg, and Brenda. I sat down at my kitchen island and opened it. Asterisk Valerie, we are appalled by your behavior today. Sending Greg away when he was trying to be civil was unnecessary. We need to settle this matter privately, without expensive lawyers who will only drain the family resources. Here is the proposal we have agreed upon as a family ***. You will transfer the deed of the Maple Street house to Greg and Brenda immediately. This will provide stability for your nephew and niece. ***. You will provide spousal support to Greg for a period of 5 years, considering you sacrificed his career to support yours. I laughed out loud at that one. Sacrificed what? His high-scoring Call of Duty. ***. You will pay a lump sum of $50,000 for pain and suffering caused to Brenda during this transition. ***. You will agree to a quick, uncontested divorce. In exchange, Greg will agree not to seek 50% of your current company shares. ***. This is a generous offer, Valerie. If you refuse, we will support Greg in a full legal battle. We will testify that you are emotionally abusive and neglectful. Also, remember that you are the godmother of this child. Do not punish an innocent baby because of your jealousy. Love, Dad. ***. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with rage. They wanted me to pay Brenda for pain and suffering. They wanted me to pay alimony to a man who had been stealing from me. And the threat? They would testify against me. My own parents were willing to perjure themselves to destroy me, just to prop up Brenda. It was breathtaking in its audacity. They were banking on my guilt. They were banking on the fact that I had spent my entire life trying to please them. They thought if they pushed hard enough, the old Valerie, the shadow sister, would fold just to make the yelling stop. I started typing a furious reply. Are you insane? He cheated on me. She is my sister. But my finger hovered over the send button. No. That's what they wanted. They wanted an emotional reaction. They wanted me to engage, to argue, To plead. If I argued, I was negotiating. And you don't negotiate with terrorists. I deleted the draft. Instead, I printed the email. I printed the texts. I went to my home office and printed the bank statements showing Greg's theft. I printed the credit card receipts for the Cabo trip. I created a physical file. Label, war. My phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Dad. Voicemail. Then the house phone rang. They were relentless. I unplugged the landline. I put my cell phone on Do Not Disturb, allowing calls only for my inner cycle, which sadly was a very short list. I felt a sudden wave of isolation. I had lost everyone. My husband, my sister, my parents, my extended family. Even the neighbors might turn on me once the gossip spread. I was the villain in their story, and nothing I said would change that, because the truth was inconvenient for them. The truth required them to admit Brenda was a homewrecker and Greg was a loser. It was easier to paint me as the monster. I walked to the window and looked out at the rain. I needed an ally. I needed someone who knew the real story. And then, as if summoned by my desperation, a yellow cab pulled into my driveway. A woman stepped out, struggling with a giant leopard print suitcase and a soaked umbrella. Sarah, my college roommate, my maid of honor, who had told me on my wedding day, "I give it 5 years, but I support you." She lived in New York. I hadn't called her yet because I was too ashamed. But there she was, marching up my walkway like a general arriving at the front lines. I opened the door, and before I could say a word, she dropped her suitcase, looked at my tear-stained face, and said, "I saw Brenda's Facebook post about the miracle baby. I'm here to help you bury the body." Pause. Metaphorically or literally, I brought a shovel. I burst into tears, but this time they were tears of relief. Sarah didn't hug me gently. She hugged me fiercely, like she was trying to hold my shattered pieces together by sheer force of will. She dragged me into the living room, kicked off her heels, and opened a bottle of wine I had been saving for a special occasion. "This asterisk is asterisk a special occasion," she declared, pouring 2 massive glasses. "It's the day you finally wake up." We sat on the floor, and I told her everything. The dinner, the drive, the texts, the email from my father. When I showed her the email, Sarah didn't get sad. She got furious. She paced my living room, gesturing wildly with her wine glass. "Pain and suffering for Brenda," she shouted. "She slept with your husband. The only pain she should be feeling is the shame of being a terrible human being. And your parents, Val," she continued. "I've told you for 20 years that they are toxic, but this is biblical-level betrayal." "They said they'd testify against me," I said quietly. "They said I was abusive." "Let them," Sarah said, dropping to her knees in front of me and grabbing my shoulders. "Listen to me, Valerie. Look at me. You are not the victim here. You are the bank. And they are terrified. Terrified." I sniffled. They seem pretty confident. "That's bluster," Sarah said. "Think about it. Greg has no job. Brenda has no job. Your parents are retired and living on a fixed income, plus whatever handouts you give them. If you cut off the money tap, they starve. They are attacking you because they need you to fold before you realize you hold all the cards." She was right. I had been so focused on the emotional wound that I hadn't looked at the strategic landscape. "He wants the house," I said. "He thinks it's community property." "Is it?" Sarah asked. She knew I was meticulous with finances. "Val, tell me you didn't put that loser on the deed." I managed a weak smile. "I bought the house before the wedding. It's in the name of the 5 Anderson Holdings, LLC. I put it there for liability protection because of my job." Sarah's eyes widened. "And the prenup?" "My boss at the time insisted on it," I said. "Greg signed it without reading it because he wanted to prove he didn't care about money. But I haven't looked at it in 10 years. I don't remember the specific clauses." "Then we find it," Sarah commanded. "Tonight we find every scrap of paper. We build a fortress. And tomorrow, we go nuclear." We spent the next 4 hours turning my home office upside down. We found the prenup in a safe box at the back of the closet. We found tax returns. We found the credit card statements I had printed earlier. As we worked, Sarah kept up a steady stream of reality checks. He told you were sterile, she asked as she sorted through receipts. Val, didn't you tell me once that Greg refused to get tested? I paused. Yeah. He said his boys were fine. He wouldn't go to the urologist. He said the problem was obviously me because of my stress. Right, Sarah snorted. Or maybe asterisk is asterisk the problem. And Brenda got knocked up by the pool boy, and they're pinning it on Greg because he's the one with the rich wife. I stopped cold. The thought hadn't even occurred to me. Asterisk Brenda wouldn't. Greg wouldn't be that stupid. Asterisk Greg is asterisk exactly asterisk that stupid, Sarah said. And Brenda is asterisk exactly asterisk that manipulative. We need to add a paternity test to your list of demands. By 3 a.m., we had a pile of evidence. The consulting expenses that were actually gifts for Brenda, the timeline of the affair based on credit card locations, the prenup, which, upon rereading, had a devastating infidelity clause. I looked at the stack of papers. It was ugly. It was a chronicle of my stupidity and their greed. But it was also ammunition. You realize what you have to do, right? Sarah said, pouring the last of the wine. You can't just divorce him. You have to destroy them. If you give them an inch, they will take everything. You have to go grey rock. No emotion, just law. I know, I said. The sadness was gone now, fully replaced by a cold resolve. I need a shark, not a family lawyer. A shark, Sarah said. Diane Miller. She handled my cousin's divorce. She eats cheating husbands for breakfast. I'll make the appointment for 9 a.m. I looked at my phone. Another text from my dad. We are waiting for your response, Valerie. Don't make us come over there. I typed a response this time. I will respond through my legal counsel. Do not contact me again or I will file for harassment. I hit send. Then I blocked the number. Good, Sarah said. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow we go to war. I lay down on the couch, unable to go back to the bed Greg had defiled. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I visualized the plan. They wanted a villain. Fine. I would be the villain. I would be the worst nightmare they could imagine. A woman who knows her worth and has the receipts to prove it. Diane Miller's office was all glass and steel, located on the 40th floor of a downtown skyscraper. It screamed expensive, which was exactly what I wanted. Diane herself was a woman in her 50s with a razor-sharp bob and eyes that looked like they could laser through a bank vault. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Sarah sat next to me, nodding in validation. When I finished, Diane took a sip of her water and looked at the stack of documents I had brought. Okay, she said, her voice calm, authoritative. Let's look at the damage. She picked up the prenup first. She scanned it, her eyebrows raising slightly. Who drafted this? My old corporate counsel, I said. Is it valid? It's ironclad, Diane said, a small smile playing on her lips. Section 4, paragraph B. In the event of proven infidelity, the offending party forfeits all claims to any appreciation of marital assets and waives all rights to spousal support. And look at this definition of infidelity. It includes emotional affairs and financial misappropriation. She looked up at me. Greg didn't read this, did he? He said legalese gave him a headache, I admitted. Good for us, Diane said. Now, let's talk about the house. You said it's in an LLC. 5 Anderson Holdings LLC, I confirmed. I bought it 6 months before the wedding. And did you ever add his name to the LLC membership? No. Did you use joint funds to pay the mortgage? Sometimes. I hesitated. From the joint account. Diane frowned. That creates a commingling issue. He could claim he contributed to the equity. But, I interrupted, pulling out the spreadsheet Sarah and I made last night. I can prove that every dollar in the joint account came from my paycheck. Greg hasn't deposited a cent in 5 years. In fact, these records show he withdrew joint funds for personal use, gambling, gifts for Brenda, travel. Diane took the spreadsheet. Her eyes scanned the columns. $15,000 on online poker last year. Apparently, I said. I felt a flush of shame. I didn't check the line items. I just paid the total balance. This is embezzlement, Diane stated. He was taking funds entrusted to the marital partnership and diverting them for illicit purposes. We can argue that any equity he claims he built was negated by the theft. She leaned back in her chair. Valerie, here is the situation. Legally, you are in a very strong position. But practically, these cases are messy. Judges hate family drama. If we go to court, it will take 2 years. Your parents will testify. It will be ugly. I don't care, I said. I want him to have nothing. I understand, Diane said. But there's a smarter way. We appeal to their greed. She outlined the plan. We call it the honey trap. They think you are emotional and weak, Diane explained. They think you are desperate to keep the peace. So, we play into that. We draft a separation agreement. We make it look like you are giving them exactly what they want, a quick divorce so they can get married and be a real family. But in the fine print, we clarify the asset division based on the strict terms of the prenup and the LLC ownership. They won't sign that, Sarah said. They will if they don't read it, Diane countered. Or if they think they are getting something better. We structure it so that Greg waives his rights to the potential value of your company's shares, which he thinks are huge, in exchange for you not suing him for the gambling debt and the fraud. But I'm keeping the house. I asked. Absolutely, Diane said. The house remains with the LLC. The agreement will state that Greg vacates the property upon the finalization of the divorce decree. But we couch it in language that makes it sound like a temporary transition. We let them believe they are winning until the ink is dry. It's risky, I said. It relies on their arrogance. Diane agreed. From what you've told me, Greg and your sister are not detail-oriented people. They are opportunistic. They will see quick divorce and waiver of lawsuit, and they will sign. I thought about Greg's face when he left the house. You're just a bitter old woman with your spreadsheets. He underestimated me. He always had. Let's do it, I said. One more thing, Diane added. We need to secure your assets immediately. Cut all credit cards. Freeze the joint accounts. Move your direct deposit today. Right now. He'll notice, I said. Let him, Diane said flatly. He wants your money to date your sister. The party is over. Leaving Diane's office, I felt lighter than I had in years. I had a plan. I had a team. I went straight to the bank. I sat with a manager and systematically dismantled the financial life Greg and I had built. I closed the credit cards. I removed him as an authorized user. I transferred the bulk of the savings into a new account solely in my name. When I walked out of the bank, my phone buzzed. A notification from the credit card app. Transaction declined. Starbucks $14.50. He was buying coffee for 2. Probably a latte for him and a decaf for Brenda. And for the first time, the card didn't work. I smiled. It was a small, petty victory, but it tasted sweet. Sorry, Greg, I whispered to the phone. Looks like you're paying cash today. But the real test was coming. I had to go see them. I had to look them in the eye and pretend I was broken, all while holding the knife that would cut the cord. I texted my father. I'm ready to talk. Let's meet. The trap was set. Now I just had to make sure I didn't vomit when I saw them. The coffee shop I chose for the meeting was neutral ground. It was halfway between my parents' house and my office, a sterile corporate chain with fluorescent lighting and jazz music that was just a little too loud. I arrived 15 minutes early, not because I was eager, but because I needed to get into character. I checked my reflection in the darkened window. I had worn my oldest cardigan, the one with a slight pill on the sleeve, and skipped my usual concealer. I let my shoulders slump. I needed to look like the defeated wife, the woman who had lost everything and was desperate to salvage a scrap of dignity. Diane sat next to me, crisp and professional, but she had softened her usual shack-like gaze. Remember, she whispered, sliding a thick document across the table. You are not the CFO today. You are the heartbroken sister. Let them think they are doing you a favor by signing this. I nodded, my stomach churning. It wasn't fear anymore. It was anticipation. It was the feeling of watching a roller coaster inch toward the drop. Greg and my father arrived together. Greg looked tired but smug, wearing a suit jacket I had bought him 3 Christmases ago. My father walked with that stiff, righteous gait he used when he felt he was the moral authority in the room. They sat down without shaking hands. Greg wouldn't meet my eyes. "Valerie," my father started, his voice booming slightly. "I'm glad you came to your senses. We don't want a war. We just want what's best for the baby." "I know, Dad," I said, letting my voice crack just enough. I stared at my hands, twisting my wedding ring, which I was still wearing for effect. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what Mom said about being the big sister." Greg looked up, interest piqued. "So, you agree to the terms?" Diane interjected smoothly. "Valerie agrees that a protracted legal battle would be detrimental to everyone's health. She is willing to grant the divorce immediately. She is also willing to waive her right to sue you, Greg, for the accounting irregularities we found." Greg flinched. "Irregularities? I told you those were consulting expenses." "Regardless," Diane continued, waving a dismissive hand, "Valerie is willing to let it go. In the spirit of moving on." I looked up at Greg, summoning every ounce of sadness I could muster. "I don't want to fight you, Greg. I loved you. If Brenda is who you want, if she can give you the family I couldn't—" I paused, wiping a fake tear. "Then I won't stand in your way." My father let out a long breath, shoulders relaxing. "Good girl, Valerie. I knew you had a heart." "However," Diane said, sliding the document toward them, "to make this legally binding and fast, so you can marry Brenda before the baby arrives, we need to sign the settlement agreement today. It grants the divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. It states that each party keeps the assets currently in their sole possession and waives claims to the other's future earnings." Greg frowned, looking at the thick stack of papers. "What about the house?" "The email said I get the house." "The agreement states that you will maintain residence at the Maple Street address," Diane said carefully, using very specific phrasing, "and Valerie will vacate." She paused. "It also includes a clause where Valerie agrees not to seek repayment for the $45,000 in marital funds you spent on external relationships." Greg's eyes widened at the number. He looked at my father. He knew if that number came out in court, he'd look like a thief. "And the alimony?" Greg asked, greedy to the end. "I can't do alimony, Greg," I whispered. "But I'm walking away from the house. I'm giving you a home for your child. Isn't that in?" My father nudged Greg. "Take the deal, son. A house in Seattle is worth a fortune. She's giving you the equity. Don't push her." Greg looked at the document. He flipped through the pages rapidly. I held my breath. If he read Section 12 regarding third-party entities or LLC ownership rights, the game was up. But he was skimming. He was looking for dollar signs and the word house. He stopped at the signature page. He picked up the pen. "This means it's over?" he asked, looking at me. "No takebacks. You're not going to come after my business ideas." "I won't touch your business ideas, Greg," I said. That was easy to promise, since he didn't have any. "And you'll leave us alone." "I just want to disappear," I said softly. He smirked. The victory was in his eyes. He thought he had broken me. He thought he had won the house, the girl, and the freedom, all while sticking me with the bill. Right now, as I watched his hand hover over the paper, I knew there was no turning back. I was about to nuke my entire life to build a new one. My heart was pounding against my ribs, not from sorrow, but from the adrenaline of the kill. If you are still listening to this story, please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below. It lets me know you are amazing and that you are riding shotgun with me on this journey. Your support is huge for me. Comment 1 so I can see you. And now, let's see what happens when the ink hits the paper. Greg signed. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was loud in the quiet coffee shop. Asterisk scratch, scratch star. The sound of a man signing his own death warrant. My father signed as a witness, beaming like he was signing a peace treaty that ended a war he had started. "There," Dad said, capping the pen and pushing the documents back to Diane. "That wasn't so hard, was it? Now we can all move forward." "Yes," I said, standing up. My legs felt shaky, but I forced them to hold. "I'll go pack the rest of my things this weekend. You can have the keys on Monday." "Monday is good," Greg said, already pulling out his phone, probably to text Brenda the good news. Make sure you leave the washer and dryer. Brenda has a lot of baby clothes to wash. I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted metallic blood. Of course, the washer and dryer stay. I walked out of the coffee shop with Diane, maintaining my slumped posture until we turned the corner and were safely out of sight. The moment we were clear, I straightened my spine and inhaled a lungful of wet Seattle air. Did we get it? I asked Diane, my voice steady. Diane held up the folder, a wicked smile spreading across her face. We got it. He waved discovery. He waved spousal support. And most importantly, he signed the acknowledgement that all assets held by third-party corporate entities are excluded from the marital estate. He thinks the house is a marital asset, I said, a bubble of hysterical laughter rising in my throat. He thought asterisk, Diane corrected. Legally, he just agreed that 5 Anderson Holdings LLC is a third-party entity, and he has no claim to it. He just evicted himself. The weekend was a blur of surreal acting. I went back to the house, my house, and packed. But I didn't pack everything. I packed my clothes, my jewelry, my personal documents, and the things that had sentimental value only to me. My parents came over on Sunday to supervise, ensuring I didn't steal anything that belonged to the baby. Brenda was there, sitting on my sofa, eating my snacks, directing Greg on where to hang a new, hideous painting she had bought. Valerie, Brenda called out as I was taping up a box of books. Leave the Dyson vacuum. Okay. My back hurts. I can't be pushing a heavy one around. I looked at her. She was glowing with the triumph of the golden child who finally got the ultimate prize. She had taken my husband, my home, and my future. Or so she thought. Sure, Brenda, I said. And the espresso machine, she added. Greg says you make great coffee. I need to learn. Keep it. My mother walked into the room, shaking her head. You see, Valerie, it feels good to give, doesn't it? You have so much. It's only right to share with those less fortunate. It feels clarifying, I said. Well, don't look so sour, Mom chided. You're a free woman now. You can focus on your career. That's what you always wanted, right? No husband to cook for, no kids to worry about, just you and your money. The disdain in her voice when she said money was palpable. Yet she was standing in the house my money board, wearing a sweater my money paid for. Yes, Mom, I said, picking up the last box. Just me and my money. I walked to the door. Greg was standing there holding the keys I was supposed to surrender. No hard feelings, Val, he said, offering a hand I refused to shake. Hopefully, we can still be friends. For the family. Friends. I repeated, looking him dead in the eye. Goodbye, Greg. Enjoy the house. Really soak it in. I handed him a set of keys. They were the old keys. I had already scheduled the locksmith for Monday morning, an hour after the eviction notice would be served, but he didn't need to know that yet. I walked to my car, the rental I had picked up, because I had hidden my company car in a garage Diane recommended. I drove away, watching them in the rearview mirror. My parents waving, Greg and Brenda kissing in the doorway. It was the perfect picture of a happy family. I drove 2 blocks, pulled over, and vomited into a bush. The acting was over. The nausea of pretending to be weak, pretending to accept their abuse, finally caught up with me. I wiped my mouth, took a swig of water, and looked at myself in the mirror. You did it, I whispered. Now burn it down. The next 30 days were a lesson in patience. In Washington state, there is a waiting period for divorce, even an uncontested one. But because we had filed the settlement agreement immediately, the clock was ticking down to the final decree. During this time, I lived in a corporate apartment my company owned. I went to work. I smiled in meetings. I ignored the Instagram posts Brenda was putting up. So blessed to be building a nest with my soulmate in our dream home, captioned with a photo of her feet up on my coffee table. Nursery progress, showing Greg painting my guest room a garish blue. Every photo was a piece of evidence I saved, just in case. But the real weapon was the paperwork Diane had filed. Let me explain exactly how the trap worked. Because if you are a woman with assets, you need to know this. 10 years ago, My mentor told me, Valerie, never own anything in your own name if you can help it. Put it in an LLC. It protects you from lawsuits and it protects you from life. So 5 Anderson Holdings LLC owned the house on Maple Street. It owned the car. It owned my investment accounts. When I married Greg, he signed a prenup. He was lazy, so he didn't read it. The prenup stated that any asset owned by a separate entity prior to marriage remained separate property, regardless of who lived in it. But the kicker, the absolute beauty, of Diane's legal maneuvering was the infidelity forfeiture clause, combined with the settlement agreement Greg just signed. The settlement said, Gregory agrees to vacate the marital residence upon entry of a final divorce decree unless a separate lease agreement is signed with the property owner. Greg thought he was the new owner because of the verbal agreement and my gift of the house. He thought the property owner was us or him. He didn't realize the property owner was a corporation. And corporations don't have feelings. Corporations don't have sisters. Corporations only have contracts. And since Greg had no lease with 5 Anderson Holdings LLC, the moment the judge stamped final on our divorce, Greg became a squatter. It's brutal, Sarah said one night as we drank wine in my temporary apartment. It's the most beautiful, brutal thing I've ever seen. It had to be, I said, staring at the city lights. If I had just fought them in court, the judge might have given him the house just to keep the baby housed. Judges are sympathetic to children. But this way, he signed it away. He agreed to leave. He just didn't know when. And the money? Sarah asked. The joint accounts are closed, I said. The credit cards are cancelled. But I left one account open. The one linked to the automatic bill pay for the house utilities. Why? Because I want the lights to stay on until the wedding. I smiled. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel safe. You're scary, Sarah laughed. I'm just a CFO, I shrugged. I'm managing risk. On the 29th day, the judge signed the decree. I was officially divorced. I was officially single. And legally, Greg was officially trespassing. Diane called me. The papers are signed. The eviction notice is prepared. The locksmith is on standby. The movers are booked to take your furniture to storage. Wait, I said. Don't send the movers yet. Let them have their wedding first. You want them to have the reception in your house? Diane asked, confused. No, I said. They are having the reception at the community center because they are cheap, but they are coming back to the house for their wedding night. That's when we strike. That's cold, Valerie. They stole my husband and tried to steal my future, I said. Cold is the only temperature I have left. I hung up. I looked at the calendar. Saturday. The wedding was Saturday. I had sent a gift. It wasn't a toaster. It was a process server. I didn't attend the wedding, obviously. But in the age of social media, you don't need to be present to witness a train wreck. You just need a burner account. Greg and Brenda's wedding was a testament to their delusion. My cousin Mike, who was secretly on my side but feared my mother's wrath, texted me play-by-play updates. Brenda is wearing white, a lot of white, and a tiara. She looks like a cake topper that melted. Greg is drunk. He's telling everyone about his investments expanding. Your mom is crying during the toast about how true love always finds a way. I think I'm going to hurl. I sat in my apartment scrolling through the photos. There they were, my ex-husband and my sister cutting a cake that I knew my dad paid for. They looked triumphant. They looked like they had gotten away with murder. Brenda's caption on her post, finally, Mrs. Anderson. So happy to start our life in our forever home. #blessed #soulmate #sorry not sorry. That hashtag. #sorry not sorry. That was the final straw. She wasn't just happy. She was gloating. She wanted me to see this. She wanted me to know she had won. I looked at the clock. It was 9 p.m. The reception was winding down. They would be heading back to Maple Street soon. I called the private security firm Diane had hired. Initiate phase 2, I said. Copy that, Miss Anderson. We are on site. The locksmith has finished. The notices are posted. I felt a surge of adrenaline so strong my hands shook. This was it. While they were dancing to Unchained Melody, a team was changing every lock on my house. While they were throwing the bouquet, A process server was taping a bright orange notice to vacate on the front door, the back door, and the garage. And while they were getting into their just married car, my dad's sedan, since I took the company car, my security team was parking across the street, ready to enforce the law. I imagined the drive they were taking. They were probably laughing. Greg was probably loosening his tie, thinking about carrying his pregnant bride over the threshold of the house he bullied me out of. He was probably thinking about how smart he was, how he had played the system. He didn't know the system was rigged against him from the start. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water. I didn't need alcohol to numb this. I wanted to feel every second of it. Happy wedding day, Brenda. I toasted the empty room. Welcome to reality. My phone buzzed. It was Mike again. They just left. Heading your way. Good luck, sis. Give 'em hell. I grabbed my coat. I wasn't going to stay in the apartment. I needed to see this. I drove to my old neighborhood and parked 3 houses down, hidden in the shadows of a large oak tree. I watched the street. It was quiet. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and black. The house, my house, was dark. I had remotely cut the power via the smart home app 5 minutes ago. Headlights swept across the street. A car pulled into the driveway. It was them. The show was about to begin. The scene unfolded with cinematic perfection. Greg's car door opened, and he stumbled out, still in his tuxedo, looking a little unsteady. He went around to open the door for Brenda. She emerged, her white dress trailing on the wet driveway, holding her stomach theatrically. They walked up the path to the front porch. I rolled down my window just an inch to hey. Why are the lights off? Brenda complained, her voice shrill in the night air. I told you to leave the porch light on. I did? Greg slurred slightly. Bulb probably burned out. Relax, babe. We're home. He fumbled in his pocket for the keys. The keys I had given him. The old keys. He slid the key into the lock. He turned it. Nothing happened. He jiggled it. He pulled it out, wiped it on his pants, and tried again. He shoved his shoulder against the door. It didn't budge. What is wrong with you? Brenda snapped. Open the door. I have to pee. It's stuck, Greg grunted. Must be the humidity. Hang on. He tried again, twisting harder. Snap star. The key broke off in the lock. Damn it! Greg yelled, kicking the door. That's when the motion sensor floodlights I had reactivated remotely suddenly blazed to life, bathing them in blinding white light. And that's when they saw it. The bright orange piece of paper taped right at eye level. Notice of eviction and criminal trespass warning. Greg ripped it off the door, squinting to read it. What is this? Brenda asked, leaning over his shoulder. It says we are trespassing, Greg stammered. 5 Anderson Holdings, LLC. Valerie. He roared my name. Valerie. I know you're doing this. This is my house. You can't lock me out. He picked up a decorative rock from the garden and marched toward the living room window. Don't do it, Greg, I whispered to myself. Before he could throw it, the unmarked sedan across the street flashed red and blue lights. 2 uniformed off-duty officers, hired security with arrest powers, stepped out. Drop the rock, sir, one of them commanded, hand on his holster. Greg froze. Officers. Thank God. My ex-wife. She locked us out. This is my house. I have my pregnant wife here. You have to let us in. The officer walked up the driveway, calm and imposing. Sir, step away from the door. Can I see some ID? Greg fumbled for his wallet. I live here, 42 Maple Street. Check your records. The officer looked at the ID, then at the clipboard he was holding. I have a deed here listing the owner as 5 Anderson Holdings, LLC, and I have a signed court order dated yesterday stating that Mr. Gregory Anderson agreed to vacate the premises immediately upon divorce. That was a formality. Greg shouted, spit flying. We had a verbal agreement. She gave it to me. Verbal doesn't trump a court order, sir, the officer said. And since you are no longer a resident, and you just attempted to break a window, you are currently trespassing. You need to leave. Leave? Brenda shrieked. Leave where? We live here. All our stuff is inside. My baby's crib is inside. Your personal property has been packed and moved to a storage facility, the officer recited. Here is the address and the key to the unit. He handed Greg a small brass key. You packed my stuff. Brenda looked horrified. You touched my underwear. This is illegal. I'm calling my dad. You can call whoever you want, the officer said. But you cannot stay here. If you don't get in your car and leave in the next 3 minutes, I will arrest you for trespassing and attempted vandalism. Greg looked at the house. He looked at the orange sticker. He looked at the broken key in his hand. The reality was finally pacing through the alcohol and the arrogance. He didn't own anything. He was a guest who had overstayed his welcome. Valerie! He screamed into the night again, looking right at the oak tree where I was hiding, though he couldn't see me. You bitch! You planned this. You let us plan the wedding knowing you were going to do this. I smiled. Yes, I did, sir. Last warning, the officer said, stepping closer. In the car now. Brenda started sobbing. It was a loud, ugly wail. My wedding night. You ruined my wedding night. Greg shoved her toward the car. Shut up, Brenda. Just get in the car. Don't push me, she screamed back. This is your fault. You said you handled it. You said she was stupid. She tricked me. They were screaming at each other as I scrambled back into my dad's sedan. Greg slammed the door, peeled out of the driveway, and sped off, the tires screeching on the wet asphalt. The officers watched them go, then turned off their lights, and returned to their post. Silence descended on Maple Street. I leaned back in my seat, my heart racing, but my soul singing. They were homeless on their wedding night. But I wasn't done. The house was just the shelter. Now I had to take the food. The next phase of my plan relied on the fact that Greg and Brenda were creatures of habit and entitlement. I knew exactly where they would go. There was only one luxury hotel in town that they considered worthy of them, the Fairmont. I drove there, keeping a safe distance. Sure enough, my dad's car was pulled up to the valet. Greg was storming into the lobby, Brenda trailing behind, her white dress now streaked with mud from the driveway tantrum. I parked and walked into the lobby, staying near a large potted palm where I could see the check-in desk. Greg slammed his hand on the marble counter. I need a suite. The presidential if you have it. My house, we had a plumbing emergency. Lying to the end. The receptionist typed away. Certainly, sir. We have a suite available. That will be $850 a night plus tax. May I have a credit card for incidentals? Greg pulled out his black Amex, the one that used to be attached to my corporate perks, the one I had cancelled at 9:01 a.m. that morning. He swiped it. The receptionist frowned. I'm sorry, sir. This card has been declined. Try it again. Greg snapped. It's an Amex Platinum. It doesn't have a limit. It's coming up as card cancelled or stolen, she said, her voice dropping a polite decibel. Stolen. Greg turned red. That bitch. Hey, try the Visa. He handed over the joint Visa. Declined. Greg started sweating. He patted his pockets. He pulled out a debit card, his personal one. The one linked to the account where he kept his consulting money. This one works, he said confidently. The receptionist swiped. She waited. She looked up, pity in her eyes. Sir, it says insufficient funds. What? Greg yelled. There was $5,000 in there yesterday. There was. But remember the gambling debt? The one I had stopped paying? The casino had a lien. The moment the joint protection was lifted by the divorce decree, the creditors swooped in and garnished his personal account. Diane had tipped them off. Brenda stepped up, wiping her mascara-stained eyes. Just use my card, Greg. God! She dug into her purse and pulled out a card. It was a supplementary card. This card is also invalid, the receptionist said. The silence in the lobby was deafening. People were staring. The bride in the muddy dress and the groom with no money. We have cash. Greg stammered. He opened his wallet. He had maybe $40. Not enough for a Motel 6, let alone the Fairmont. I need to make a call, Greg said, his voice trembling. He pulled out his phone. He dialed my number. I watched my phone light up in my purse. I let it ring. He dialed my parents. Dad, I heard him say, his voice breaking. She locked us out. She cancelled the cards. We're at the Fairmorn. We can't pay. We have nowhere to go. I couldn't hear my father's response, but I saw Greg's face crumble. What do you mean you can't come? Yes, I know it's late, but Brenda is pregnant. Fine. We'll come to you. He hung up and looked at Brenda. Your dad says we can sleep on the pull-out couch in the den. The couch! Brenda shrieked. I'm a bride. I'm pregnant. I can't sleep on a couch. Well, we can't sleep here. Greg shouted back, losing it. We have no money, Brenda. She took it all. She took every damn cent. You said you had your own money. Brenda accused, shoving him. You said you were a tycoon. I was spending her money. Greg confessed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. It was all her money. Are you happy now? The receptionist cleared her throat. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disturbing the other guests. They walked out of the hotel. The walk of shame to end all walks of shame. No luxury suite, no champagne, just a cold ride back to my parents' house to sleep on a lumpy sofa in a room that smelled like old newspapers. I walked to the bar in the hotel lobby. Champagne, I told the bartender. The most expensive glass you have. Celebrating something, he asked. Freedom, I said. And justice. Monday morning. I walked into my office building feeling like I was walking on air. The security guards nodded at me. My assistant, oblivious to the weekend's drama, handed me my coffee. You have a full schedule, she said. And, your family is in the lobby. They're demanding to see you. Send them to conference room B, I said calmly. And call Diane. Tell her to bring the file. Oh, and ask Mr. Henderson from legal to join us. I checked my makeup. Sharp winged eyeliner, red lip, power suit. I wasn't Valerie the victim anymore. I was the CEO of my life. I walked into conference room B. They were all there. My mother looking haggard. My father furious. Greg wearing the same clothes as yesterday, looking unwashed. Brenda weeping softly in the corner. You monster! My mother screamed the moment I entered. How could you? On their wedding night. I sat at the head of the table. Please, sit down. We have business to discuss. Business? Greg slammed his fist on the table. You stole my house. You stole my money. I reclaimed my property, I corrected. And I stopped subsidizing your fraud. We are going to sue you, my father shouted. We are going to tell everyone what you did. Tell them what? I asked coolly. That I evicted my ex-husband from a house he didn't own? That I stopped paying for my adult sister? Go ahead. But before you do, you should look at this. Diane walked in, followed by our corporate counsel, Mr. Henderson. She placed a thick stack of papers on the table. This, I said, pointing to the stack, is a forensic accounting of the last 5 years. Greg, you embezzled over $150,000 from our joint accounts for gambling and unauthorized gifts. That is a felony. Greg turned pale. And Brenda, I looked at my sister. Here are the receipts for the jewelry, the trips, the clothes, all paid for with stolen money. In the eyes of the law, that makes you an accessory to fraud, receiving stolen goods. Brenda stopped crying. I didn't know. Ignorance is not a defense, Diane said sharply. Now, I continued, standing up, here's my offer. I will not press criminal charges against Greg. I will not sue Brenda for the return of the assets. I will not sue you, Mom and Dad, for the money I lent you over the years that you forgot to pay back. My parents shrank in their seats. In exchange, I said, you will sign a non-disclosure agreement. You will never contact me again. You will never come to my office. You will never come to my home. And you, I pointed to Greg, you will acknowledge that the debt you owe the casino and the IRS is yours alone. The IRS. Greg squeaked. Oh yes, I smiled. I filed an innocent spouse relief form this morning. The IRS knows you didn't declare that gambling income. They'll be in touch. Greg put his head in his hands. He was done. You're destroying us, my mother whispered. We're family. No, I said, my voice hard as steel. You were parasites. I was the host. I'm just curing the infection. What about the baby? Brenda wailed. Your nephew. He needs a home. I looked at Brenda. I looked at her stomach. And I played my final card. The one I had been saving. About that baby, I said, pulling one last sheet of paper from the file. Greg, do you remember when we tried IVF? You refused to get tested. Greg looked up, confused. So, I continued, I had the doctor run a test on the sample you gave for the home kit we tried first. I found the results in your desk. You hid them. I slid the paper to him. You have a genetic condition, Greg. Azoospermia. You have 0 sperm count. You are sterile. The room went completely silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Greg looked at the paper. Then he looked at Brenda. Brenda's face drained of all color. She looked like a ghost. Brenda. Greg's voice was a dangerous whisper. Brenda, whose baby is that? I. Brenda stammered. The test is wrong. Valerie forged it. It's from the clinic, Greg, I said. Call them. Greg stood up. The realization washed over him. He had blown up his life, lost his rich wife, lost his home, and gone into debt for a baby that wasn't his. Who is he? Greg roared, grabbing Brenda's arm. It was just one time. Brenda screamed. With the trainer. It didn't mean anything. I needed you to marry me. I needed the security. You trapped me. Greg shouted. You ruined my life for a bastard child. He lunged at her. Security guards stepped in immediately, restraining him. Get them out, I said to the guards. All of them. As they were dragged out, Greg screaming obscenities, Brenda wailing, my parents looking old and defeated, I felt nothing. No joy, no sadness, just silence. The silence of a clean slate. The revelation about the baby was the nuclear bomb that vaporized whatever was left of their alliance. I didn't need to do anything else. I just watched the fallout from a safe distance. Greg was arrested for assault that day in my office. He spent the night in jail. When he got out, he had nowhere to go. My parents refused to let him back in. After all, he wasn't the father of their grandchild anymore. He was just a broke, violent man who had humiliated them. Brenda's life imploded. My parents, faced with the shame of a daughter pregnant by a random gym trainer and the loss of their rich son-in-law fantasy, turned on her. How could you be so stupid? I heard my mother screaming at her over the phone. Sarah had bugged the house. Kidding. It was Cousin Mike again with the updates. You had the golden goose and you killed it. They didn't care about the morality. They cared that the scam failed. Greg filed for an annulment based on fraud. He claimed Brenda tricked him into marriage. He also tried to sue me again, representing himself because he couldn't afford a lawyer. The judge threw it out in 5 minutes and ordered him to pay my legal fees. Since he couldn't pay, he had to declare bankruptcy. And the baby. It turned out the trainer was a 22-year-old college student with no money and no interest in being a father. Brenda was facing single motherhood with 0 assets, living in her childhood bedroom, listening to our mother complain daily about how much she cost. I received a letter from Greg about 2 weeks later. It was sent to my office. Valerie, I know I messed up. I was weak. Brenda manipulated me. She preyed on my insecurities. I never stopped loving you. I was confused. Please, can we talk? I'm living in my car. I have nothing. You are the only good thing that ever happened to me. Please give me a second chance. I read it twice. 10 years ago, I would have cried. I would have thought, asterisk is hurting. I need to help him. Asterisk, but I looked at the handwriting, the same hand that signed away my dignity for a house he didn't own. I took a red marker. I wrote return to sender across the envelope, and I dropped it in the shredder. I didn't hate him anymore. I just didn't care. He was a stranger. A lesson I had learned the hard way. The destruction of the Anderson Miller clan was total. My parents, without my monthly allowance, couldn't afford their lifestyle. They had to list their house. The house where I grew up. The house where I was always second best. They downsized to a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Brenda had to get a job. Real job. She started working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. Cousin Mike told me she looks 10 years older. She complains to anyone who will listen about how her evil sister stole her inheritance. But nobody listens. People in town saw the police cars. They know the truth. Greg left Seattle. Rumor has it he moved back to Ohio to live with his brother. He's working in a call center. I maintained absolute no contact. I changed my number. I moved to a new house, a sleek, modern penthouse in the city, far away from the suburbs. I sold the Maple Street house to a nice young couple. I didn't want the memories. One rainy afternoon, 6 months later, I ran into my mother at the grocery store. It was inevitable in a city, I suppose. She looked frail. Her hair wasn't dyed its usual perfect blonde. The gray was showing. She saw me and stopped her cart. "Valerie," she said. Her voice wavered. I stopped. I didn't run. I stood my ground. "Hello, Joyce." "Not Mom." Joyce star. "We miss you," she said, tears welling up. "Your father, he's not doing well. His heart. We could use some help." There it was. The hook. The guilt. His heart. Help. I looked at this woman who had told me to give my husband to my sister, who had called me greedy, who had valued me only as long as I was useful. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said politely. Medicaid covers heart conditions. You should call them. You were my egg donor," I said. "And my abuser. I'm done paying for my own abuse." I walked past her. I didn't look back. I bought my groceries, expensive cheese, good wine, things I enjoyed, and I walked out into the rain. But this time, the rain felt clean. It felt like baptism. It has been a year since the dinner from hell. I am writing this from a balcony on the Amalfi Coast. I took a sabbatical. For the first time in my life, I am not working. I am just being. The lawsuit is a distant memory. The pain is a scar, faded in white. I met someone here. His name is Luca. He's an architect. He doesn't know about my money, and he doesn't care. He likes that I'm smart. He likes that I beat him at chess. Yesterday, we were sitting by the ocean, and he asked me, "Valerie, why do you always check the bill so carefully?" I smiled. "Because I learned that if you don't audit your life, someone else will embezzle your happiness." I thought about Brenda, probably changing a diaper in a cramped apartment, bitter and angry. I thought about Greg answering phones in Ohio, dreaming of the life he threw away. They wanted everything. They ended up with nothing. I wanted nothing but love, and I ended up with everything. My freedom, my fortune, and finally, myself. I realized that the shadow sister didn't exist anymore. I wasn't a shadow. I was the sun. I had just been letting them stand in front of my light. I took a sip of my wine, the same wine I drank the night Sarah told me to fight. To the auditors, I whispered to the sea, and the sea whispered back, "You won." If you are going through something like this, if you are the one always giving and never receiving, listen to me. Stop. Close the account. Change the locks. You are worth more than what you can provide for others. Don't be the shadow sister. Be the CEO of your life. Thank you for listening to my story. Have you ever faced such a betrayal from your family or a partner? What did you do to reclaim your life? Let me know in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested in your experiences.